In this game we are going to use the Europa Multiplayer balance mod, because you know, last time those mercenaries were very AIDS. And I will be playing as Switzerland. So, enjoy. Okay, so I'm just adding this in at the end of the video. It's worth noting that I'm not going to include anything like casualty counters and bits like that, because Skanderberg, which is what I usually use to check all this stuff, went a bit weird with the save, and I think that is because the mod updated, so you're just going to have to do without for this video and maybe the series. The Confederation of the Swiss Cantons that occupied the Alps had slowly been growing over the previous centuries. New cantons were soon involuntarily being accepted into the Swiss Confederacy. As they expanded, a major war was developing in Italy. Milan and Venice were contending over Italian hegemony, and Milan had banded together with Austria, whilst Venice had allied with its trading partner, the Ottomans. Venice didn't last long. Venice didn't win.
Really? Venice is dead already?
The Swiss allied themselves with the great power of France, who would help them expand in return for helping France deal with Burgundy. Loose ties were also made with Cologne. The European alliance chains were as followed. England and Burgundy had aligned with each other, Milan and Austria were allied, and Spain and France were also allied. The story in Eastern Europe was very different. Muscovy, Austria, the Mamluks, and Denmark had formed a sort of hug box whilst they were not all directly allied. Opposing them would be Poland, Hungary and Brandenburg, with the Ottomans keeping the Mamluks occupied. After some initial complications, thanks to Brandenburg's PC...
We're frozen again.
What?
Fucking frozen again.
Oh my god, it's on the 21st as well.
Rifos, your fucking shit PC broke.
No, it says Rifos in red.
Yeah.
For all.
Yeah.
Actually, it says me right as a shit PC.
Name is Ratty Boy.
What
Yeah,
the
go on,
fuck?
Here's the
That's why
rat.
guys, listen.
I'm gonna ban you, Vander.
Wow.
The Swiss and French had expanded to adequate levels to take on Burgundy. France had negotiated with Austria to not get involved if he attacked Burgundy, and also with England, saying that he'd engage in a 1v1. He did call in the Swiss Confederacy as a minor partner, whilst Burgundy called in many allies and vassals in the Holy Roman Empire. There was a major issue, however. The Duke of Anjou, who was in charge of the Paris defences, had been very liberal with his spending, and no, I'm not talking about being liberal on spending on the fortifications. Paris was poorly defended with a level 1 fort, and was only a hop, skip and a jump away from the Burgundian border. In better news, Charles de Baffy, a French vassal, was a military genius. He would lead the French and the Swiss armies, while Charles the Bald would lead the smaller, but higher quality Burgundian armies. The initial plan was to take Auxerrois before marching on the Burgundian capital, but the problem of the poor Parisian defences would persist throughout the war and unveiled itself now. As the French army, using some Swiss cannon, sieged Auxerrois, the Burgundians began the siege of Paris. He's going for Paris, John.
Alright, I reckon we just fight him on Paris then.
Oh, do you not have a level 2 fort on Paris? And with its weaker defences, it became obvious that it would fall. To make the situation worse, an English diplomat voiced England's concerns over the supposed 1 versus 1.
So what happened to that 1v1 deal, Ironhawk?
I mean, it's Switzerland.
Yeah, a pretty
Burgundy-
fucking honking Switzerland, let me tell you.
It's got 16k man.
Mm. If I see Burgundy losing because of this,
I mean, he's got.
Go on,
I can
go
see
on.
He's got literally about the same.
Oh,
amount
just
as
stack like that 7k. Stack like that 7k. The siege of Auxerrois was broken, but as the French marched on Paris, the Burgundians withdrew. The move was then made to get some breathing room around Paris by sieging some of the Burgundian forts in the north.
We could just no, take the left, take the left. Oh shit, he's attacking.
Yeah. Oh, you're smashing him. I'll go next. Tell me. I'll just go now. The Burgundians had already inflicted serious casualties, and when the English garrison from Calais joined the fray,
Alright, England's in. I'm gonna call Spain.
France saw no other option but to call in Castile. Oh, come on, Aragon. Come on, Aragon. A second siege of Paris was soon turned back, with a token force of Burgundians holding off the main army, allowing the rest to retreat. A French counterattack was launched to take Picardy, but there was a strategic blunder.
The Ottomans are currently at war.
Oh, they've called the fucking Ottomans against me. Fuck off, man.
I
You should be
mean,
able to walk
Rank
around
up,
and just
I'm
hold the line,
not
hold the
helping you
line,
by
we're
the
gonna
way,
win on this
what,
pretty
like
easy,
at all.
right?
Well, you're...
You got another sack at the back.
Oh, shh. Come on!
Put a maneuver general on him. Put a general, quickly. No, it's too late. Oh, we won! The victory allowed the French to seize Picardy, but the English and the Burgundians now made a move south into Switzerland. They were adamant on getting the Swiss Confederation out of the war. Like, they've moved all their armies down south, John.
Oh, we'll
Yeah.
keep the game going for a bit longer.
I want to siege this down.
User
Unless-
joined your channel.
No, siege that. Can you barrage it? Build...
No, it's fine. Don't worry, Josh. Defensively do that, and yeah, and then by the time that siege, I'll be able to get down there. I'll finish this siege off by the time I get there.
User joined your channel.
To make matters worse, Morocco had now declared war on Castile and Portugal with the aid of the Ottomans, and they were in southern Spain, as the Spanish navy had been defeated. The Castilians had to withdraw. The French and the Swiss then marched south in order to prevent the occupation of Switzerland. However, Bern, the capital of Switzerland, was sieged, and a drastic Swiss relief army was defeated after French reinforcements could not arrive on time.
I'm not doing shit.
You get getting intercepted by the fucking Palatinate. Put general on there.
User joined
How are you
your
guys
channel.
doing in the war right now?
Alright.
Yeah, we joined the...
We're getting unlucky mainly.
God.
Like a billion HRE nations here.
Put a general on that stack so it moves quicker.
Look how many people you're war with.
That's
Holy
lost.
shit.
That's lost, Josh.
Yeah.
Retreat. It was looking bleak for Switzerland. Luckily, Castile managed to organise a peace, ceding Ceuta to Morocco. This allowed the Castilian armies to rejoin the French and the Swiss. The French laid siege to Bern, and the Burgundians had withdrawn into eastern Switzerland. The main Burgundian army looked like it would reach Bern before it could be sieged, but the French were in luck. Some absolute Swiss mad lad, resenting the horrible Burgundian oppression, threw open the gates at night, allowing the French to occupy the city. I'll let you reinforce first.
Oh, yes!
Yeah.
We've taken the fort!
People of Bern, rise up!
Wait.
The Burgundians were dismayed the next morning to see the Swiss banner flying once more over Bern. However, they continued their advance. The bulk of the Burgundian army was shattered before England could reinforce them, and the Swiss gave chase to the retreating army. The remaining English and Burgundian troops then threw themselves into Bern to prevent themselves from getting cut off in eastern Switzerland.
Actually, yeah, Vander, what are you doing? Go, get ready to go.
Yeah.
How did you get...
The Parisian problem persisted, and Picardy was re-sieged while Switzerland was unoccupied. As the armies marched to relieve Paris, the Burgundians once again retreated. The French then laid siege to Auxerrois again. Aragon was being as helpful as ever.
Yes, I have, but they're fucking sitting in Salamanca, and they've been sitting there.
A large host of Burgundian and British troops then marched south to meet the French, Swiss and Castilians. The stage was set for the Battle of Auxerrois. The French and their allies formed up north of Auxerrois, where they could block the Burgundian and English armies from converging on the town. The largest contingent, that of the French, took up position on the right with cavalry on the wing and a small number of men in reserve. The smaller Swiss and Castilian armies took up position on the left, with some Spanish cavalry hidden in the trees. Another 20,000 or so Castilian reinforcements were en route. Charles de Baffy, the French vassal who we'll just call Baffy, was keen to sit tight and hold his position despite his superior numbers in order to gain an even greater numbers edge. Charles the Bold then arrived on the field. The English took up position on the Burgundian left, whilst the elite Burgundian troops took up position with the woods on their right flank. A local Burgundian peasant, keen to see the Burgundians win, swiftly informed Charles that there was a contingent of Spanish cavalry on the left flank. As a response, Charles moved his own cavalry up through the woods, keeping them hidden. He then ordered a general advance to engage with Baffy's larger force. Charles had to spread his forces out to engage along the wide front. As the two sides began engaging in melee, Charles made it obvious that he had no reserves. The higher quality Burgundian footmen were pushing back their Spanish and Swiss counterparts, but Charles had used the huge amount of dust kicked up by his army advancing to cover the advance of his cavalry into the woods opposite the clearing. The Spanish cavalry had not noticed this advance, and they were ordered to engage by Baffy, who saw an opportunity to crush the Burgundian right flank. But shortly after they had outflanked Charles's infantry, the Burgundian knights came crashing out of the woods, slamming not only into the Spanish cavalry, but the Spanish infantry. The Swiss reserves were quickly redeployed to stabilise the front, but many Spanish had already been cut down, and they could only hold them off for so long. The right flank had been going much better for Baffy though. The English had been driven back but were holding firm. At this point, Baffy made the decision to detach his French cavalry and reserves to go and aid his crumbling left flank. By the time they got there, the Swiss and Spanish were already retreating. This shook the French reinforcements, who also left the field. The Burgundian cavalry gave chase to the fleeing men. Baffy did not follow up with a retreat, however, as he knew that there were still 20,000 Castilian reinforcements en route to the battle. He held firm and drove the English back to their starting positions. As the battle raged into the evening, there was still no sign of the Castilian reinforcements, and the Burgundian infantry were closing in on the rear of his position. It was too late for a retreat. Baffy, with a small contingent of French nobles, managed to escape the bloodbath. The remaining 25,000 Frenchmen were all killed or captured. The Battle of Auxerre had been lost. Out of manpower and with the Burgundians once again at the gates of Paris, France made the decision to hire many mercs. The mercenaries could not be recruited quick enough in time to save Paris. However, Aragon finally got off their arse and marched out of Salamanca to go and relieve Paris. Their attack was futile, however it did give the garrison at Paris some much needed time, and this allowed the French, Castilian and Swiss armies to muster and meet the Burgundians and English outside the gates of Paris once more.
Right, actually, fuck it, we're gonna go. We're gonna fight this. Founder, bring your men up. All of them.
I can go in first because so we can actually get in.
Yeah.
Get missed up.
George, yeah, you're gonna have to go in now. I'm just gonna click on it. Go.
There you go. Be more cautious with the reinforcements.
Tell me, I don't know how overstacking
John, you're
works.
chucking everyone in.
Yeah, I've got a Billy. I can't do anything.
If you've got any, don't go straight in, Vander.
No, don't
If you've
go
got anything-
straight in.
Yeah, just sit on the province behind.
I should have told me that
It's
earlier.
because I had a.
Yeah, it's fine. We've got 18k.
Oh, I just fucking retreated, what?
Oh,
I don't know how. Tell me when to move in.
Now, just chuck it all. Just chuck it now. I don't know what's going on.
Both stacks?
They were driven back with another Burgundian army arriving late and taking some decent casualties. The Battle of Paris was followed up with another victory at Picardy, where the new French mercenaries proved their worth, driving the Burgundian right from the field. Following the Battle of Picardy, the French split their forces. Half of them went south with the Swiss to siege the fort of Auxerre, whilst another half went with the Castilians to siege the fort of Picardy. The Burgundians and English engaged both armies at the same time. The English who attacked in the north were hastily beaten. The Burgundians in the south were losing as well, and well, I don't know how we lost that battle. Methinks that France accidentally retreated out of it, but hey ho. Following the battle, Burgundy decided to go for a peace with honour, despite having greater war score, where France agreed to take 2 provinces and Switzerland also. Most importantly, the strategically placed fort of Verdun was taken. The Burgundian War brings our story to an end for today. I will say that there was a massive war going on in Eastern Europe, but that I will touch on in the next video.
I speak
Pretty toxic, right?
Yeah, it was actually, I felt really mean.
Rag, is this supposed to be your coming out story as a furry?
Oh, the hell are Boglamites and why are they rising up?
You're a furry.